Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Battles record, La-Di-Da-Di. Battles are a New York experimental rock band. This is their third full-length album. They also have connections to numerous underground rock bands in math rock and post-hardcore groups like Tomahawk and Helmet and Don Cab, but over the years they have developed a following entirely their own, thanks to their fantastic breakout record in the late 2000s, Mirrored, which was put out on Warp Records, and the band stuck with the label as they released their sophomore full-length album, even though they released that record right after a pretty significant lineup change, losing their multi-instrumentalist and lead singer, Tion-Dai Braxton. But they took this loss as an opportunity to invite other vocalists onto the band's music, and it led to some of my favorite Battles songs of all time, tracks like My Machines, as well as Ice Cream. And on this record, Battles also embarked on all of these really long, colorful, intense instrumental jams. It was hard for me not to get wrapped up in the band's kind of futuristic sound. It wasn't a perfect record. There was kind of a boring track here and there, and it was a little too compressed for my tastes, but still, it was one of my favorite records of the year. And I love that record so much that I was pretty excited to hear this new album over here, because from the tracks leading up to the release of this album, it seemed like we were getting another helping of Gloss Drop. On this record, the band is opting out of vocal accompaniment altogether and are giving us a 12-track, 50-minute album that is just based completely on the band's instrumental chops. And once again, on this LP, Battles drop some pretty interesting and great high-quality sounds. We have crisp, resonant, clear, just very vibrant drums and drum playing, some slinky guitar leads and very interesting little electronic glitches here and there, great keyboards, once again, the trademark kind of heavy organ sound that Battles use in a lot of their tracks shows up once more. But altogether, Battles don't really seem to be serving up anything too different from what they had been doing on their last record about 4 years ago. Altogether, just a very similar sound, which I think kind of ends up working against this album, to be honest. Instead of just no vocals on this record, sort of liberating Battles and encouraging them to experiment a bit more with structure and with sound, because they're not kind of basing their tracks around these pop song structures like they were on many of the songs with guest vocals on their last record. Instead, they have kind of fallen into a bit of a comfortable and a familiar rut with an album that I think really lacks any significant experimentation and is kind of middle of the road and tame, at least by Battles standards. Now, I do like the opener on this record, the YABBA, which kicks off like in this 5/8 time signature and is one of the most subtle tracks as far as the beginning of a Battles song and builds to a really bustling, intense finish. I like the way the song evolves and progresses. It has numerous parts to it. I thought it was a nice little instrumental odyssey. I love the song MEGATOUCH too, the beautiful little eerie melody that first introduces itself in the track early on is pretty beautiful, and I like how sort of unpredictable the track is. Each new section and sort of instrumental shift in it is entirely different from the previous moment in the track. But a lot of the shorter, sort of mid-sized deep cuts on this record, there's nothing really that spectacular or special about them. Tracks like .NET and FF Bada, these tracks bring some decent grooves, and that's about it. They feel like a milder version of a lot of the instrumental jams off of Gloss Drop, with less, I guess, structure and less experimentation and less exploration and less of a strong melodic character, less intense, not quite as dramatic either. These characteristics are things that tracks like Wall Street off of Gloss Drop brought in spades. Instead, many cuts off of La-Di-Da-Di sound like Battles 4 years ago could have performed and written these tracks in their sleep. Some of the melodic components of these tracks too feel really redundant and uninteresting as well, sort of like on the song Summer Simmer, where I feel like we have this sort of tedious buildup only to lead us to a really soulless lead guitar melody and some squawking guitar noises. I mean, it's not really that fantastic of progression. Again, the performances are on point. There's nothing too out of place or anything like that. And the production is very clear. It's very rich. The sounds are vibrant, but the writing is just pretty drab. I just feel like Battles are seriously working underneath their creativity level on this record. Even some of my favorite cuts on this LP feel like they could have been swapped out with any number of tracks on Gloss Drop, and it would have made for just kind of a alright moment. Like with the song Nonviolence, where the only thing that really sticks out to me about this track is that it has some pretty cool syncopated guitar riffs and drums, which make for an interesting little experiment in the midst of the track. And the song .com has one of the coolest starts of any track on this entire record. Battles kind of embracing that more electronic side of their sound. But the thing is, it doesn't really progress to an interesting place, which I think is the issue for most of these tracks. They start off well enough, and they have that Battles sound, they have that Battles vibe. There's a good point A, but there's either no point B, or point B is just so similar to point A, I just feel like I haven't moved or progressed anywhere. And then it gets even worse with some of the shortest tracks on here, like Tineware, where Battles clearly just recorded a warm-up or like some kind of test or something in the studio and are trying to pass it off as a track. Are we seriously trying to tell ourselves this track was written? This was written? This sounds like a bit of a practice session or something, and it's just bam, on the record. The closer on here has some interesting moments where all the instrumentation just kind of slows down all of a sudden out of nowhere, but it's really just too little too late to start doing some cool experimental stuff. There have been so many bland and just sort of predictable moments on the album so far. It's not really, you know, pulling things together. There's so many bland and predictable moments leading up to this point. It's not exactly the three-pointer that is sort of shot just as the clock is running out that wins the game. I think that I appreciate that Battles didn't want to do a pop record this time around. They didn't want to come through with music that sort of had that strong pop sensibility like they had on Gloss Drop. They didn't want to do something super sugary, but I don't think they replaced that sugar. I don't think they replaced that sweetness with something else. It just kind of feels like I'm listening to what Battles was doing 4 years ago, but it doesn't pop, it doesn't snap, it doesn't electrify quite as much. It doesn't even feel like they replaced this poppiness with anything truly experimental or adventurous either. I would actually say that there are moments on Gloss Drop that are far more experimental, especially the closer. Far more experimental than anything that's done on this record. Gotta say, despite the fact that Battles, I think, has been one of my favorite rock bands of the modern era, and I thought their last record is probably going to be one of my favorite albums as far as rock music of this decade, no question about that. This album was just a severe letdown for me. Again, I just think they're really working underneath what their potential is on here. And I'm not exactly sure what kind of held them back from doing something more ambitious this time around. I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this thing. Transition, have you given this record a listen? If you have, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you like it more than me? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's about it. Anthony Fantano, Battles, forever.